What if I told you one man held off an entire invading army without ever being seen? No scope, no backup, just snow, silence, and a rifle. They called him the White Death. This isn't a legend, it's history. This is the terrifying true story of Simo Häyhä. To understand how Simo Häyhä became the White Death, we have to go back to a quiet village tucked away in the forests of southeastern Finland. It's the year 1905, and in the tiny settlement of Rautjärvi, winters are long, bitter, and unforgiving. The people here are tough, hardened not by war, but by nature itself. Survival means braving months of darkness, hunting your own food, and finding warmth where you can. This is where Simo was born, into a life not of comfort, but of challenge. He was the seventh of 8 children in a modest farming family. Money was scarce, but discipline was abundant. There were no distractions, no radios, no city lights, no noise. Just silence, snow, and space. From an early age, Simo took to the forests like he belonged there. At just a boy, he would disappear. Into the trees for hours, sometimes days, learning to move like the animals he hunted. Every step was deliberate, every breath measured. In these woods, the difference between a clean shot and a missed chance could mean going hungry. His rifle wasn't a tool, it was an extension of his body. Hunting wasn't sport, it was survival. Over time, this quiet, focused boy began to display something rare, near superhuman precision. While other teenagers played or daydreamed, Simo practiced. Every shot was a lesson, every target, a test. By his early 20s, he wasn't just good, he was exceptional. He entered local shooting competitions with outdated equipment and still came home with first place. His shelves began to fill with trophies, medals, and certificates. Not that he boasted. Simo was never one to seek attention, but people noticed. They whispered about the boy who could hit a target with his eyes almost closed, about the young man who could blend into the forest so completely that even the birds didn't notice him, and though no one could have known it. Yet the Finnish wilderness was doing something extraordinary. It was shaping a hunter, not just of animals, but of men. By 1925, Simo Häyhä had become a young man, quiet, wiry, and unassuming. Like all Finnish men of the time, he was required to complete mandatory military service. He did so without protest, without flair. He followed orders, trained hard, and kept mostly to himself. To his fellow recruits, he seemed ordinary, almost invisible, but those tasked with evaluating his shooting skills noticed something immediately. He never missed. While others struggled to control their breath or manage recoil, Simo made it look effortless. His precision was uncanny, almost unnatural. He didn't speak much, but when he held a rifle, it spoke for him. It was clear he had a gift. After completing his service, Simo returned to civilian life. He preferred solitude, working his family's farm, tending to his land, and disappearing into the woods with his rifle. For over a decade, he lived quietly, far from the chaos of the outside world. But in November of 1939, the world came crashing to his doorstep. The Soviet Union, armed with over 400,000 troops and thousands of tanks, launched a full-scale invasion of Finland. Joseph Stalin expected victory in days. After all, the Red Army outnumbered the Finns, more than 3-1. The world watched, assuming Finland would be swallowed whole, but the Finns didn't break. They dug in. They used the forests, the snow, the cold, everything in their harsh homeland to their advantage. And once again, Simo Häyhä answered the call of duty. He enlisted without hesitation and was assigned to the 6th Company of Infantry, Regiment 34, stationed in the Kola sector, an area that would soon become one of the most ferocious front lines of the war. Temperatures there dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. Supplies were scarce. The snow was waist deep. And yet, the Soviets came, wave after wave. In these hellish conditions, something inside Simo awakened. He wasn't just another soldier following orders. He was a man at home in the wilderness. A man whose every childhood hunt had prepared him for this. While others struggled in the snow, he moved through it like a ghost. While enemy snipers relied on scopes, Simo trusted his instincts and his iron sights. And soon, a whisper began spreading among his comrades. There's someone out there in the woods, picking off Soviets with terrifying precision. The soldier who once trained in silence was now becoming a legend. The Kola front wasn't just a battlefield, it was a frozen nightmare. Temperatures regularly plunged below 40 degrees Celsius. Fingers stiffened, weapons jammed, and even breathing felt like inhaling shards of ice. The snow was deep, wind unforgiving, and daylight scarce, sometimes lasting only a few precious hours. It was here, in this bitter wasteland, that Simo Häyhä found his purpose. Where others struggled to survive, he thrived. Clad head to toe in a handmade white camouflage suit, Simo blended seamlessly into the landscape. He didn't wear standard issue gear. He didn't need to. His snow-white uniform turned him into a ghost among the drifts. Against the blank canvas of the frozen wilderness, he was practically invisible. And his rifle? It wasn't the modern scoped weapon you might expect. Simo carried a Finnish Seiko M2830, an iron-sighted modification of the Soviet Mosin Nagant rifle. Most snipers preferred scopes for long-range accuracy, but Simo rejected them. Why? A scope could reflect sunlight and give away his position. A scope could fog up in extreme cold. Iron sights, though? Iron sights kept him low to the ground, silent, undetected. He didn't need magnification, because he never missed. But it wasn't just his weapon that made him deadly. It was the way he hunted. Each mission began long before he ever pulled the trigger. Simo would scout the terrain, choosing high ground, shaded hollows, or buried depressions where he could build his snow fort. He didn't just lie on the surface. He dug in, carving a personal sniper's nest out of the snow itself. Packed walls muffled the sound of his rifle and absorbed recoil. A small notch in the front offered just enough space for his barrel. Nothing more. Even his breath was controlled. In the freezing air, a single exhale could rise like smoke and reveal his position. So he kept snow in his mouth while he waited, reducing the warmth of his breath so it would vanish without a trace. And then he waited, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. His patience was legendary. Soviet patrols would pass mere meters from his location, and he wouldn't flinch. He waited for the perfect shot. No movement, no noise, no second chances. Then, crack. One shot, one kill. And by the time his target hit the ground, Simo was already gone, vanished back into the white void. To the Soviets, he was a nightmare come to life. Men began refusing orders to patrol certain areas. They spoke of him in frightened whispers. They gave him a name, not as a soldier, but as something far more terrifying: the White Death. Simo operated alone, no spotter, no support. He moved. Behind enemy lines with only a day's rations and his rifle, he studied Soviet patterns, learned their routines, and used the terrain like it was an extension of himself. He anticipated ambushes, laid traps, and dismantled enemy morale one soldier at a time. In these frozen forests, there was no artillery, no tank support, no grand strategy, just a lone marksman with unmatched skill and unshakable resolve. And what he gave Finland was hope. While Soviet propaganda painted their war as a righteous crusade, the reality was clear on the battlefield. One man hidden in the snow was halting their advance with nothing more than his wits, his rifle, and the silence of death. The Soviet advance into Finland was supposed to be swift, overwhelming, inevitable, but what they found was something else entirely. Something cold, quiet, and deadly. The deeper they marched into the forests of Kala, the more they realized they were not alone. It began slowly. A scout would go missing. A sentry wouldn't report back. Then, more frequent disappearances. One by one, soldiers began falling. No sound, no flash, no warning. Just the soft thud of a lifeless body collapsing into the snow. No return fire, no sign of where the shot came from. It was as if the forest itself had turned against them. Word spread fast through the Soviet ranks. This was no ordinary sniper. This was something else, something inhuman. They called him Belaya Smrt, the White Death. At first, commanders dismissed the stories as superstition, battlefield hysteria brought on by the bitter cold and relentless resistance. But then, the reports became impossible to ignore. Dozens of confirmed kills, then hundreds, all executed with surgical precision. And the most chilling part? No one ever saw him. Simo Häyhä had become a ghost in the forest. He operated alone, without a spotter, without backup, and often behind enemy lines. Where Soviet snipers needed teams, he needed only silence. While others required maps, he used instinct. The Kola region was not just his battlefield, it was his home. Every ridge, every snow-covered rock, every hidden path through the trees was familiar terrain. He was the forest. And like a predator stalking prey, Simo didn't simply react, he anticipated. He studied Soviet tactics, learned their patterns, and exploited every mistake. A foot out of cover, a glint of metal in the sun, a moment's hesitation. That was all he needed. What made Häyhä truly terrifying wasn't just his aim. It was his presence, or rather the lack of it. There was no warning, no sound before the kill. Just the eerie, suffocating silence of the snow. Soviet soldiers described the sensation of being watched, of moving through open terrain with a sense of dread crawling up their spines. They began refusing to patrol certain areas. Some shot blindly into the woods out of sheer panic. Others ran. Simo never spoke a word to his targets, never revealed his position. He had no interest in fame or medals. He had a singular goal: defend his homeland no matter the odds, and he did so with a methodical brilliance. He chose elevated positions, dug into the snow with sniper pits designed to absorb sound and recoil. He packed snow in front of his rifle to prevent the blast from disturbing the surface. He even placed snow in his mouth to conceal the visible cloud of his breath in the freezing air. Every detail, every move, calculated. Even Soviet snipers sent to track and eliminate him met the same fate. Some were ambushed before they ever got close. Others simply vanished, claimed by the White Death, who watched them before they even knew they were. Being hunted. As his kill count rose, panic turned to fear, and fear turned to legend. Soviet morale plummeted. How could they fight an enemy they couldn't see? How do you defeat a ghost? By February 1940, Simo Häyhä had become a national hero in Finland. But to the Soviet Union, he was something much worse, a psychological weapon. His presence alone changed how enemy troops behaved. They moved slower, they hesitated. They second-guessed their every step, and in war, hesitation kills. But Häyhä wasn't driven by bloodlust. He never gloated, never spoke of vengeance. He fought because his home had been invaded, because everything he loved was under threat. He believed in the land he walked upon, the same land that shielded him, the same snow that hid him, the same silence that echoed his purpose. He became more than just a man with a rifle. He became a symbol. To Finland, he was the embodiment of resilience, the quiet fury of a small nation standing tall against a superpower. To the enemy, he was terror incarnate, an invisible hand delivering death from the forest. And through it all, Simo Häyhä remained invisible, silent, cold as the wind that swept across the treetops, and just as unstoppable, because in the forests of Kola, death didn't come with a roar, it came in silence, and it wore white. War creates legends, but some legends aren't shaped by myths or exaggeration. Some are carved from cold, hard numbers, and the numbers that trailed behind Simo Häyhä, they were almost unbelievable. In just under 100 days of combat during the Winter War, Häyhä recorded over 500 confirmed kills with his bolt-action rifle. Add to that another 200 estimated kills with his Suomi KP-31 submachine gun during close-quarter skirmishes and ambushes. That's more than 700 enemy soldiers, eliminated by a single man. Let that sink in, more than 5 kills per day on average. And this wasn't in a high-tech modern battlefield with drones and infrared scopes. This was in 40°C temperatures, with limited daylight, primitive equipment, and no digital assistance, just a rifle, a pair of iron sights, and the unbreakable will of a Finnish farm boy. And he did all of this while remaining virtually unseen. Häyhä didn't wait for the war to come to him. He hunted. He stalked. He studied enemy patterns and moved with the terrain like a ghost in the trees. His kill zones stretched for kilometers. Yet he never fired unless he was sure. Every bullet had a purpose. Every shot, a consequence. Even more remarkable was that Häyhä's weapon of choice was not the scoped sniper rifles favored by other marksmen. He opted for a Sako M2830, a Finnish-made variant of the Russian Mosin Nagant, with iron sights. No scope, no magnification. Why? Because a scope could fog up in extreme cold. It could reflect sunlight and give away his position. Iron sights, on the other hand, allowed him to stay lower, hidden tighter, and act faster. He chose reliability over convenience, precision over flair. His enemies, though armed with better numbers and advanced technology, were helpless against him. As his kill count rose, so did his legend. At first, Soviet commanders dismissed the stories. Surely one man couldn't possibly account for so many casualties. It had to be a fabrication, a misreporting. But the numbers didn't lie. The bodies didn't lie. The Soviet troops began to speak his name in terror. Belaya Smirt, the White Death. To them, he was an unstoppable force, an invisible executioner, in the snow. But to the Finnish people, he became something else, a symbol, a beacon of resistance. In a time when Finland was being crushed under the heel of one of the world's most powerful armies, Simo Häyhä stood as proof that one man, with courage, skill, and purpose, could shift the tide of fear. His name spread not just through the trenches, but into homes, schools, and command posts across the country. Children knew his name. Elders whispered it in gratitude. His legend reached the Finnish high command. On February 17, 1940, just weeks before the war's end, Simo Häyhä was awarded one of the nation's highest military honors, the Kola Cross. He was also presented with a custom-made Sako sniper rifle, forged in tribute to his unmatched marksmanship. And yet, through all this, fame never touched him. He never gave interviews, never posed for glory. He didn't revel in the spotlight or boast of his kill count. To those who tried to celebrate him, he offered only quiet nods and firm handshakes. To Häyhä, war was not a path to fame. It was a duty, a grim necessity to defend his homeland. He didn't count his kills out of pride, but out of responsibility. Every shot fired was a line held. Every confirmed kill was one less threat to Finland's freedom. Even his fellow soldiers described him as humble, even shy. In camp, he was quiet and reserved, always cleaning his rifle, reviewing maps, preparing his gear. He never spoke of vengeance or hatred, only of doing his job. His commander once described him as a model soldier, not because he was the best shot, but because of his discipline, modesty, and unyielding focus. And still, to the Soviets, he remained a nightmare. Every soldier in their ranks knew that entering Kola meant possibly crossing paths with the White Death. Many never returned. Some who survived said they never saw him, never heard the shot, only found comrades fallen with a clean bullet through the head or chest. He wasn't just a sniper. He was psychological warfare. The mere rumor of Häyhä in the area would change enemy behavior. Troops moved more cautiously. Commanders hesitated before advancing. Progress stalled. Morale broke, because how do you fight an enemy you can't see? How do you kill a man who never misses? By the time the Winter War drew toward its bloody end in March of 1940, Simo Häyhä had already sealed his place in military history, not just as a sniper, but as the most effective and feared marksman to ever walk a battlefield. Yet despite everything, the awards, the numbers, the legend, Simo Häyhä never once called himself a hero. He was, as always, just a quiet man with a rifle and a purpose. March 6, 1940, the snow-covered forests of Kola were soaked in silence once more. But on this day, the silence shattered. A Soviet sniper, armed with explosive rounds, had spotted a Finnish soldier, crouched low, nearly invisible among the snowdrifts. A rare opportunity. The trigger was pulled. The bullet struck Simo Häyhä in the face, tearing through his lower jaw and cheekbone, nearly destroying the entire left side of his face. The blast knocked him unconscious, blood spilling into the snow, staining the white forest red. His comrades, finding him lying motionless, thought he was dead. They began to move on, until one of them noticed a faint twitch in his leg, a sign of life. He was still breathing, barely. Häyhä was rushed to a field hospital, but his condition was critical. The damage to his face was so severe that his identity wasn't immediately recognized. He had to be identified by a fellow soldier who knew him before the war. He soon slipped into a coma, hovering between life and death for 9 long days. While his body fought to survive, Finland's war with the Soviet Union reached its bitter conclusion. On March 13, 1940, Häyhä awoke. The war was over. He didn't wake to cheers or celebration, but to the quiet grief of a nation that had survived yet suffered. The Moscow Peace Treaty had been signed. Finland had ceded over 11% of its territory, including parts of Karelia, to the Soviet Union. Over 400,000 Finns were displaced from their homes. Villages were abandoned. Fields were left frozen and empty. But the heart of the nation still beat. Finland had kept its independence, and many believed it had done so thanks to men like Simo Häyhä, the silent defenders, the ones who never surrendered. Though gravely wounded, Häyhä became a national icon. not for his kill count, but for his resilience. His survival against overwhelming odds became a story of Finnish defiance, a living legend who had stared into death and come back. His recovery was slow, painful, and incomplete. His face would bear the scars for the rest of his life. Multiple surgeries were needed to reconstruct his shattered jaw. He would never look the same again. Eating and speaking were difficult. Smiling, almost impossible. But he never complained, in now. Fact, when asked later in life whether he regretted anything from the war, Simo Häyhä simply responded, "I only did what I was told, as well as I could." There was no arrogance, no drama, just duty. He never once called himself a hero. After the war, he returned to his quiet life in the countryside. The rifle was put away, the uniform folded and stored. But to those who knew him, and to all of Finland, he would never just be another soldier. He was proof of what a single person can endure. Proof that even when struck down, one can rise again. Though the war had taken his health, part of his face, and nearly his life, it never took his spirit. Simo Häyhä had faced death in the snow and walked away. The war had ended, but for Simo Häyhä, the battle was far from over. His body bore the scars of combat, most notably, the devastating facial injury that nearly claimed his life. Over the course of 14 months, he underwent 26 surgeries to reconstruct his shattered jaw and cheekbone. The physical pain was immense, but the emotional toll was equally profound. Despite his injuries, Häyhä's spirit remained unbroken. He expressed a desire to return to the front lines during the Continuation War in 1941, but his request was denied due to the severity of his wounds. Instead, he was promoted to the rank of second lieutenant by Field Marshal Carl Gustaf Emil Mannerheim, a rare honor that acknowledged his extraordinary service. With his military career concluded, Häyhä sought solace in the Finnish countryside. He settled in Valkjärvi, Ruokolahti, near the Russian border, where he resumed his life as a farmer. The tranquility of rural life provided a stark contrast to the chaos of war, offering him a chance to heal and find peace. Even in peace, Häyhä remained a solitary figure. He never married and lived alone, his disfigured face a constant reminder of the past. Despite his reclusive nature, he found companionship in his hunting dog, Kila, and took great pleasure in moose hunting, a passion that led him to participate in hunting expeditions with notable figures, including President Urho Kekkonen. Häyhä rarely spoke of his wartime experiences. When asked about his remarkable marksmanship, he attributed it simply to practice. Regarding his wartime actions, he once stated, "I did what I was told, as well as I could. There would be no Finland unless everyone had done the same." Despite his modesty, Häyhä's legacy grew over the years. He became a symbol of Finnish resilience and determination, a testament to the impact one individual can have in the face of overwhelming odds. His story inspired countless others, and his legend as the White Death endured long after the war. In his later years, Häyhä moved into a war veterans nursing home in Hamina, where he spent his final days. On April 1st, 2002, he passed away at the age of 96. He was laid to rest in his hometown of Ruokolahti, leaving behind a legacy that continues to captivate and inspire. Simo Häyhä's life was a study in contrasts, a man of extraordinary skill who chose humility over hubris, solitude over celebrity. His story reminds us that true heroism lies not in glory, but in quiet dedication to a cause greater than oneself. In the annals of military history, few names evoke the blend of awe and respect as that of Simo Häyhä. Known as the White Death, his legacy transcends the battlefield, embodying the spirit of resilience and the profound impact one individual can have amidst the tides of war. Häyhä's story is not merely one of unparalleled marksmanship, but of a man who, through quiet determination and unwavering duty, became a symbol of national pride and human endurance. His exploits during the Winter War, where he amassed over 500 confirmed kills, were not acts of aggression but of defense, protecting his homeland against overwhelming odds. The moniker, the White Death, encapsulates the paradox of Häyhä's existence. a bringer of death who sought peace, a solitary figure whose actions echoed across nations. This duality reflects the complex nature of warfare and the individuals who, reluctantly, become its instruments. After the war, Häyhä returned to a life of seclusion, his disfigured face a testament to the sacrifices made. He rarely spoke of his wartime experiences, maintaining a humble demeanor despite his legendary status. When questioned about his remarkable skills, he attributed them simply to practice. Yet, his legacy endured. In Finland, he became a national icon, representing the tenacity and spirit of a nation that refused to yield. Globally, military historians and enthusiasts study his tactics, seeking to understand the mind of a sniper who achieved the highest number of confirmed kills in any major war. Häyhä's life has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and articles, each attempting to capture the essence of the man behind the legend. His story serves as a reminder of the extraordinary feats achievable through dedication, skill, and an unwavering sense of duty. In 2002, at the age of 96, Simo Häyhä passed away, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire. His story is not just a chapter in military history, but a testament to the impact one individual can have in shaping the course of events. Simo Häyhä's legacy lives on, not just in the annals of history, but in the enduring spirit of those who stand firm in the face of adversity. His life reminds us that heroism often comes in quiet forms, a solitary figure in white, steadfast and resolute, altering the course of history through unwavering commitment.